Hey everybody, ronarray here, and for the last 2 leagues, a significant amount of meta has been built around tier 17 maps. Last league I did a detailed guide on how to drop as many tier 17 as possible, while farming. And in 3.25 it would be great to revisit it, since back to basics were completely removed from the game and the whole meta changed. In this in-depth video, I will focus on showcasing the best strategies that will help you to get a lot of tier 17 maps. Check out the timestamp for particular questions as usual, and let's go. So, tier 17 maps are received when you drop a tier 16 map and it gets converted to a tier 17 map. All tier 16s that we are dropping will have a chance to become tier 17s. So we need to maximize the amount of tier 16s that drop. It is also important to mention that tier 17 maps cannot drop within tier 17 maps themselves. So the best way to farm them is in tier 16. And one of the most prominent questions about tier 17 maps farming is singular focus good for any of those strategies? So I would say that for farming strategies, when you try to get as many tier 17 maps as possible, singular focus is not good. You're going to receive on average less tier 17 maps. So singular focus is not a good node for it. And I recommend to not take it in all the setups. The first core element of the strategy is the map nodes, such as shaping the skies, shaping the mountains, and shaping the world. All of them are very important because they will help us to drop more tier 16s, and all tier 16s will have a chance to be converted to tier 17s. Second core element are watchstones. Those will raise the amount of tier 16s drops dramatically. So perfectly we will need to have all 4 watchstones to run all the strategies effective enough. And the next core part is Cartography Scarab of Escalation. It is going to be in all setups and will help us to drop more maps by a huge percentage. You can get at least 8 mods on corrupted map, which will lead us to 80% of more maps bonus from this Scarab alone. There's also one more element that you can use to maximize your map drops. It is Twist of Fate unique Atlas node. So, Twist of Fate goes like that. Your corrupted rare maps and any map crafting options applying to them are modified unpredictably when opened. Map modifiers can have from 1 to 3 additional random map modifiers. That's a huge change for that strategy, because Twist of Fate is going to change your map completely. You will run a random map because it's going to randomize it, and your map crafting options that you will need to apply will be randomized as well. However, it's going to receive from 1 to 3 additional random map modifiers. It's going to raise both quantity and rarity, and it also works very well with our Scarab of Escalation that I already mentioned before. So all of that together making Twist of Fate a very good pick if you can run it, because it's going to give you a lot of additional bonuses and a lot of additional loot. So a lot of additional maps as well, and will raise the amount of tier 17 maps that you are dropping on average. You can still run any of the strategies without it, but if your build can handle random modifiers alright, and you're not too afraid to break some maps if you were all crazy modifiers like Reflect for example, I would recommend to use that node in almost all setups. So now let's talk a little about our possible Scarab setups. First Scarab setup is pretty much expensive one, but very stable. We're using 3 Cartography Scarab of Multitude here, and all of them cost a pretty significant amount of Kelthas. You can pay about like 12 Kelthas per each, maybe a little more or a little less, but it's going to guarantee us a lot of map drops. Together with it, we are using Influencing Scarab of Conversion. That's a very important part, because Scarab of Conversion is going to pay for Scarabs of Multitude if we are not going to drop tier 17 map immediately. So, maps from Scarab of Conversion, Shaper Guardian, Elder Guardian, Conqueror, and Synthesized maps are going to pretty much pay for our Scarabs of Multitudes, and it's going to balance itself together. And the last Scarab is Cartography Scarab of Escalation. That's a very good Scarab, and it's going to stay in all the strategies, as I already mentioned. So, that strategy will have a higher cost because Scarab of Multitudes have a pretty significant price, but it's still going to pay for itself because of the conversion Scarab. And that strategy will probably net you highest amount of tier 17 maps per hour, and it's definitely a good choice. As a second option, you can also run much cheaper version but much more risky one. That way you can use Cartography, Scarab of Risk, 3 of them, instead of multitudes. Together is influencing Scarab of Conversion and Cartography Scarab of Escalation. That way Cartography or Scarab of Risk are going to add 3 additional modifiers, raising your quantity, rarity, and giving you additional map bonuses from Cartography Scarab of Escalation. The biggest issue is that you will have 3 additional modifiers, and it could be much harder to run. But if your build is not really afraid of it and you can handle most modifiers, it could be a decent option for you. And Influence Scarab of Conversion is still there because it's helping to pay for the Scarabs. And the last strategy, which is very cheap and not risky at all, but much less effective. It's just using Influencing Scarab of Conversion because it's a cheap Scarab, together with Cartography Scarab of Escalation because that one is great and pretty cheap as well, and add some basic Scarabs for other mechanics. Like you can add Scarabs for Harvest, you can add Scarabs for Blight, Delirium, or any other mechanics that you like. If you don't have any mechanics that you like, you can add like Scarab of Monstrous Lineage, Scarab of Adversaries, double. And it could be a pretty nice setup. But I would expect less tier 17 maps from that setup, especially compared to expensive one with multitudes or risky one with Cartography Scarabs of Risk. Another interesting question, so what about Cartography Scarab of Corruption? So generally, I think corruption is not really important for that strategy, because most of the time you're just focused on receiving tier 17 or Elder or Shaper Guardian maps. So for all of that, Cartography Scarab of Corruption is not that important. However, if you really need some 8 mods, you can pretty much replace one Cartography Scarab of Multitude or one Cartography Scarab of Risk with Cartography Scarab of Corruption. Even if it's not that recommended, it can help you to sustain your corrupted maps that you can use for Twist of Fate passive runs. And the last Scarab option that I want to showcase is pretty much a hybrid option. That one is showcasing one of the best results so far out of everything that I tested. So currently 2 Cartography Scarabs of Multitude together with 1 Influence Scarab of Conversion and Cartography Scarab of Escalation, and the last one is Cartography Scarab of Risk. You still will need to do random modifiers, so it could be not that easy. However, I think that option probably will be the best out of them all. Because right now, with additional bonus from Risk, they're going to receive more maps compared to just 3 multitudes or just 3 risks. That's a hybrid option, and in my experience it's been one of the best. So another interesting question is which maps to run. Usually if you're going to use Twist of Fate, it's not really that important, because Twist of Fate is going to randomize your maps completely, and it's always going to be random. So you can take any tier 16 map, perfectly 8 mods map like that for example, and run it. I recommend to run Corrupted 8 mods map because it's probably the perfect solution here. But if you're not running Twist of Fate, you can run any other set of map. So for Twist of Fate it should be Corrupted, but if you're not running it, it could be any. And by itself, if you have not corrupted options and you can choose a map, I would just recommend to run with Jungle Volley or Mesa or basic maps like that. Just don't forget that you need to clear all the map before you're going to the boss, because otherwise Maven will not spawn all the bosses with your unique ability Destructive Play. That's a very important part. And if you're running Twist of Fate, don't forget to corrupt your maps. You also will need to pick some kind of map option here. I usually pick Anarchy because it just costs 2 chaoses and it's very cheap. So generally if you're using Twist of Fate, you will need to pick Anarchy and put your corrupted map in there. Otherwise it will not work perfectly. So if you are dropping Twist of Fate, you can use any map and you can use any option as well. In that case, you can run Domination option or Ambush option, for example, because both of those are kinda great. So if you will need to choose at least one strategy out of them all, I would definitely go with one with Scarabs of Multitudes, because it's going to net you highest amount of maps, and genuinely I would recommend it. However, you can try other ones too to see which one fits with your build. Talking about the influence of our map, we can choose between Maven, Exarch and Ether. And the strongest option is obviously Ether and Maven. Ether can provide us additional quantity and rarity, which is nice. However, Maven spawns a lot of bosses at the end, and I think it fits the strategy just perfectly, because we'll have more chances to drop maps from those bosses. And we will be able to utilize other basic nodes for bosses too. So generally I prefer Maven, and as a side note, you can also run other Maven setups, because other Maven setups can pretty much help you to receive Maven crescents and stuff like that to pretty much sell it. So choosing between three of them, I definitely recommend Maven. Talking about our Atlas, we will need to take all adjusted map drop chance nodes in our Atlas that we can, because it's going to maximize the amount of maps that we are receiving. It's also important to take Shape in the Mountains, Shape in the Skies, and Shape in the World. All of them are kind of working very good together. If you can take all the higher map tier chance small nodes, I recommend it too. Another important part, we will need to take all explicit modifiers for our maps that we can. So we can take them literally everywhere. And it's pretty important. So mountain modifiers, you can go up here for chisel perfection and stuff like that. And I'm also taking some Scarab bonuses, because we'll have more bosses based on Maven, so amplified artifacts, remarkable relics, and chittering champions is a very good part. You can also take like remnants of the past, conquered conquerors, and vivid memories, because we are going to have much more bosses from Maven, and we will have some chances to drop additional maps that way. Otherwise, our whole Atlas setup is very simple. I also prefer to take at least one additional strongbox. It's just like a little fluff here, and I take some chances for maps from strongboxes could be duplicated. It's not that important, but I think it's a nice touch at the end. Taking all quantity is a very good setup too. However, I usually don't go for middle circle right here, because it takes too many points. If you dislike strongboxes, you can drop strongboxes nodes and just go for inner circle here. And the last part in the Atlas is pretty much Twist of Fate. I already mentioned that in that video, however, I recommend to take Twist of Fate if your build can handle it. If you can't, you can just get rid of those 2 points and put them in any other place you like, for example, go for inner circle. But if you can handle it, Twist of Fate is very good for that type of farm, and I definitely recommend to take that. It's also very easy to take, because you need only 2 points right here for it. There's also a last strategy that I want to mention, and it's still possible to run it, even if it could be very expensive. This is the strategy with Domination Scarab of Terror. You will get shrines in area are guarded by an Atlas boss, which is a very cool buff, because we are going to receive additional maps from bosses. And Cartography Scarab of Escalation, together with Domination Scarab and Domination Scarab again, is going to give us a lot of shrines. And all of that together work pretty well. And as the last part, we can slap Horn Scarab of Pandemonium here. So it will raise a price very heavily, but it could worth it in some cases. You can use Third Scarab of Domination in that case, or you can use a Pandemonium. That way you have so many bosses in the map itself, and we'll have higher chances to drop maps from the bosses. That strategy took a hit and right now could be less profitable, so be very careful with it. However, it's still there and could be used, together with Pandemonium or without Pandemonium. If you're going for that strategy, you will need to change your Atlas a little. Probably just dropping strongboxes points here and taking all Atlas points for shrines. You also will need to take a guaranteed shrine, because we will need as many shrines as possible. Generally, right now, I think it's less effective than basic expensive strategies that I already showcased. However, it's still there and you can try to use it. So another cool tip that you can pretty much farm Conqueror maps using that strategy. If you're going to chisel and then corrupt your Conqueror map, you will be able to run it together with Twist of Fate. And while running Conqueror's map, you're going to receive cool bonuses from Maven. It will be much easier to just rotate them, because you can just rotate 4 Conqueror maps. And at the end, you're going to receive cool bonuses from Maven itself, because you're going to receive crescents and stuff like that. Generally, you will also drop a lot of Conqueror maps in the process, so you will be able to mostly sustain them without any issues. It will be a very nice addition to already decent strategy, so try to use it if it will fit in your farming approach. Another interesting question is pretty much how many tier 17 maps you should expect. So generally I'm dropping one tier 17 per 3 or 4 maps run. That's pretty much with Scarab of Multitude strategy. It could be a little less or a little more. Sometimes you can drop a few in a row, and sometimes you can run about like 3 or 4 maps without tier 17s at all. But I'm also dropping a lot of Guardian maps, and it's pretty much paying for the strategy. We also have a lot of quantity and rarity in the map, so we're going to receive a significant amount of gold and even some experience. All of that is pretty much making the strategies pretty nice, even if tier 17s are not dropping that often. However, if your luck is better, you can pretty much drop much more and even drop 117, like 1 per 2 maps, or even more often. So that's been my guide about how to drop the most amount on tier 17 maps. I hope it's been helpful for you, and thank you very much for watching, guys. See you next time. ronarray out.